So I've been thinking a lot about teaching English lately, mostly because I'm trying to write a proposal for a journal. And so this is something that has come up in my mind. And it's about what English means to me, right? So I don't just teach English. I don't consider it just as a language. I consider it as something more than that, because English has shaped my life in a big way. So before I became an English teacher, I was an English learner. And I learned English as someone from the global south. I went to a government school in Myanmar, and it's a horrible experience, by the way. Not all government schools are bad, but the one that I went to was particularly bad. Though my experience was bad, I wouldn't say that my classmates all suffered the same way that I did. Some of them may have suffered more, some of them a little bit less, but my suffering is my own lived experience. I'm not trying to overgeneralize and say that all the government schools and all the government school teachers in Myanmar are horrible. That's not what I'm trying to say, by the way. Anyhow, I learned English as somebody from the global south, and I still am a language learner too. I never consider learning language to have an end goal. So English opened doors for me. It gives me access to education, to research, and to join in global conversations. It also allowed me to speak beyond borders, to just, make connections with people from so many different cultures, and build very meaningful relationships which have made my life richer, which has made my life deeper. And I'm super grateful for that. And it's all because of English, because we have this common language that we can, use to communicate to one another. But English also taught me something else, that English is not just a language, as I said at the very beginning, I think. It's a language with history. Every language in the world has a history. And in this context, I'm talking about English language, and its history is tied to power, colonialism, and inequality. And that's something that we need to be aware of. And I think that's something that I've become increasingly aware of as I continue to teach. It's going to be my 18th year teaching in higher education, by the way. So I have some credibility to talk about this. And also, of course, again, before people start to react negatively, I'm not saying anything negative or anything at all. I'm just really talking about my experiences. So I learned that English doesn't land the same on everybody, right? So I learned that skin color shapes how English is heard also. This face and this accent never matches, apparently, because when I first went to a job interview in Thailand, right out of grad school, this guy told me that if I stood behind a screen and spoke English, they would believe that I'm from a Western country, a native speaker of English, but that my face doesn't match my accent. Thank you so much for that identity displacement there for a while. I came back from that job interview crying, by the way. Needless to say, I didn't take the job offer. So there are also other things that have become an increasingly important aspect of our conversations in higher education, especially when you teach in an international context. That is about passports and citizenships, and how these things also shape whose English is being trusted more and whose English has more power in the world and also inside of the classroom, and how some speakers are seen as global or more global, and then others are always asked to prove themselves. And this happens not just in the classroom, this happens in higher education institutions, in the teaching job level, at the hiring level as well, and in meetings as well. Of course, this is a daily reality for many of us working in a third country teaching a foreign language or a third language. So I learned also that fluency doesn't protect me from being underestimated. Being able to speak as fluent, you may be able to speak as fluent as you would want to be, but it doesn't really underestimate you. It doesn't allow you to be excluded from underestimation if you have a face and a skin color that doesn't match the accent that you're speaking with. And speaking good English doesn't always mean that you're going to be treated as an equal person in a room either, even in rooms full of educators. So when I teach English now, I don't treat it as a neutral thing. I see English as power, and power comes with responsibility. So the point I guess I'm trying to make here is I consider these things a lot, and I think many teachers and many educators do too, not just language educators. So my students don't come to English empty-handed. They all come with languages, identities and accents and histories and citizenships that shape how the world responds to them. And my role in it is not to erase those differences or pretend they don't matter. It is, for me, I take my job as part of it is to help the learners use English without having to make themselves smaller. So Paulo Freire once said that education is not about depositing knowledge, it's about dialogue, it's about reflection and shared humanity. And I quote a lot of Freire and Bell Hooks' work because they have been very seminal in my way of thinking. I read their essays quite often. For me, teaching English means teaching with awareness of history, of politics, of skin color, of citizenship, and of power. English has changed and continue to change my life in ways that I have not expected, and this is why I teach it with care. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say, that I hope that if you are an English teacher, you're also considering your learners, languages and identities and accents and histories and their citizenships in your classes, in the safe spaces that you're creating.